I wanted to kind of point out my makeup. I intentionally wore makeup that was, this is kind of a play of like tears or crying, um, which is, I think a big part of grief. And for me, has been a really difficult part of grief for me to be able to express. And oftentimes I have to kind of, I kind of have to play with the idea of crying or I don't know if play is the right idea, but I know that I remember when I was younger, there were often times that I would wear glitter. And a big part of why I would wear glitter is that it would kind of, I don't know, it kind of helped me cope with the difficulties of life. It helped me feel like that could be what is seen first rather than potentially the pain or whatever. And then maybe we don't go there. I think that was an element of it. But I do recall very intentionally wearing glitter. I also wore glitter as a young person to deter people who might be sexually interested in me, which I think was really interesting. But I think that had to do with a little bit more of my own internalized transphobia and perceptions of femininity and attraction and all that, all that crap. And I'm not sure why I shared that there, but I did. But glitter has been something that I've experienced, or sparkle, something I've experienced in different ways throughout my life. And so for me, sometimes it's really difficult for me to really sit with what I'm exactly grieving about. And sometimes it's helpful for something outside of myself to kind of inspire that, and or even to like work it out. And so for me, sometimes doing makeup or doing art is a way that I can express my sadness, express my loss, remember things that have been difficult for me to remember. Also, one of the things that I found really helpful, so crying was something that I learned to not cry as part of my conditioning growing up as somebody who was raised as a man, and crying. And in particular, I had a trauma response in which I cried a lot. And so I got to a point where I stunted my ability to cry, which stunted me from a lot of emotions, which is kind of like a whole other thing. But if you're kind of have that similar response with life and with grief, some of the things that I found helpful in that time of my life was watching certain films or television that kind of reminded me of my story and my challenge or my grief and my loss. I used to watch the movie Rent a lot, which I think, Rent for a lot of people is maybe not an ideal, like feel good, lift your spirit kind of film. But for me, that's what it was for some reason. And I think part of that is I really resonated with a lot of the characters as a person living with HIV. So the fact that they all had HIV, but there was also a lot of the songs and the words that were spoken to each other and the feelings and the emotions that were happening throughout the show really helped me to emote and connect with those parts of myself that I really was struggling to connect with, like say in the real world. And I can tend to do that more so, right? Even just now, I can say that I still kind of use that tool. I've been watching a lot of Pose. Pose is a TV show that has a lot of trans characters in it. And there's a lot of family dynamics as far as chosen family, as well as the families that we're grown into. And a lot of the characters have difficulty with their families of origin and their families understanding them, and really struggling with being in their life with them, wanting to be in one another's lives, loving one another, but not really knowing how to do that. And so for me, it's helpful for me to see these characters and hear these characters and what they're going through, because then I feel less isolated in what it is that I'm going through. Like, I don't feel like I'm the only one in the world, which we all know better than that, but that's often sometimes what happens. And that's when like grief can kind of overtake me into a way in which I then shut off and I don't grieve at all. And that's really kind of like the challenge, I think. I don't know that there is a right or wrong way for anything. Like I just don't um, use that language. You are the only one is living your life, and you are the only one who has the perspective and the point of view of what you're actually going through with everything that's happened in your life up to this point. There's nobody who can tell you um, how you should, and this includes yourself, even how you should or shouldn't be responding to a particular situation. I think, oftentimes, like with everything else, it's about having a mindfulness or an awareness or the ability to not keep it a secret. I'm in recovery, as many of you know. And one of the phrases I've heard there, and I'm sure it's spoken outside of that, but that we're only as sick as our secrets. And the sickness is not the sense in like in recovery, it kind of refers to like our addiction. And our addiction oftentimes is not always like just the substances that we use. But like for me, I was a person who I struggled with feeling the way that I felt, and I couldn't deal with that. And so I needed something to kind of take me out of that feeling, um, which is what drugs and alcohol really came into play for. And so when I I notice that when things are in the dark, when I am going through things and I am not able to talk with other people about it, then that is in the darkness. And me keeping things from other people is is a sign that I am not coping well with what is happening in my life. And typically that usually has to do with shame. I have some sort of shame around what it is that I'm going through. Otherwise, I would probably be able to put light on it. And oftentimes, my shame is not actually like the thing that happened, but maybe my inability to, or me feeling weak, or me feeling like I should be able to respond better or differently than I am. And those sorts of things can begin to fester in me, and begin to make me unwell, and unwell in the sense of just unable to really be aware of life, to show up with one another in a connected way. Um, they say the opposite of addiction is connection, and I really believe that. And a big part of my staying sober and ability to stay clean and sober is my ability to work to connect with others, and there's been times in my life I've been better at it. There's been times when it's other people that I can connect with in order to be okay. um, there was a time in my life a few years ago where it was just like this God thing that I hoped to God was there, that I kind of connected with and communed with and had relationship in a way to cause me to have a positive effect with life and to soften the blow of life to where I can exist in it and move forward. And then the last little while, I've been learning how to connect with me more, uh, in order to kind of go through whatever it is that life is sending my way. And I'm noticing, like, in talking about grief and loss, it's like it's grief and loss is almost a part of a lot of really big things, because in some ways I'm like thinking like, oh, we're talking about going through difficult things, or I don't, but I guess that's grief and loss, right? It's grief and loss is when you lose something that you see the world, or you see a relationship, or you are in the world in a different new way, like something has to die. And so there is a grieving of what was to now what is. And obviously there's like different levels to all of that. um, if there are any other questions or comments, feel free to place them in the thing. I'm going to be going about 5 or 6 more minutes now. I just wanted to check my notes to see where I go. It's really interesting because I have like a long list of things that I was going to go through and talk about. And I think for me, that's just part of the process of getting here. I really, truly believe that, like, there's something powerful in just being able to express yourself, and say out loud what is going through your mind. I pray, and I connect with, and my intention is to speak to this in a way that is helpful for me, but also in a way that hopefully it can land on someone and be useful to them in some way. If my pain, if my struggle, if my victory, if my experience can some way help you through yours, it turns my difficult experience into an asset. It turns it into something that's useful rather than something that is just taking from my life. I was doing a tarot reading with a friend yesterday, and I don't really like. Anyway, I was doing a tarot reading with a new friend, and uh, one of the things that had came up was a recent death, and it was about a year or so ago, and I think deaths are really interesting, and I think relationships in general, or the loss of relationships, our relationships really never end completely. Like, we still have a relationship with everyone. Like, I think as long as we breathe, we potentially are still in relationship with others. And sometimes it's different. If somebody isn't physically there, you're going to have a different relationship with them than when they are. And so I think one of the things that's really important and part of the healing process is, is to be able to be on the other end, in which I can have a relationship with this person that is no longer in my life, that reminds me and brings comfort in my life in the ways that maybe they had when we could be more closer, or we could be in a different sort of relationship. And so sometimes we have to reimagine how, or tap into how others have shown up for us in the past, in order to take that wisdom, in order to take that smile, in order to take that embrace into your current situation and circumstance. And that's the power of, I think, our mind and maybe our spirit and our emotions, is that ability for us to tap into something that was now, and have that similar effect on your body. And so and it's difficult to do, because when we first lose something, all we can think about is the loss. All we can think about are the hateful, hurtful, harmful, just the trauma of it all, whatever's kind of tied to that loss, whether it's a death or the end of a relationship, which can be, I think, even more complicated. But once we're able to get past the point of the difficult aspects, or I won't even say the ugly or the blemishes or the death of that relationship and that person, then we're able to kind of, potentially engage, if we so choose, and there's the ability, back into that relationship in a positive way that helps us. I think, for me, I do that around death and dying. There are a lot of people who've passed in my life that I don't know where they are. I don't know if I actually can tap into them, or if they have anything to do with my life now or not. However, I do know that when I interact with them, when I remember them, they are real to me. They're real in the way that they can be real. And in that means that they're still alive and they're still with me. And so being able to tap into that, I know that I have an ex. Yeah, I don't know. I just have folks around me at times, or it's helpful for me to have conversations with people who are no longer in my life for whatever reason. And those conversations could just be, in the mirror or in the shower, or sometimes it could just be around a candle, or in prayer, or in meditation, to invite that person, that situation into that moment. I think the big thing about grief is that you have to really just take it on, and that's whether it's you yourself or going through it. Allow yourself grace, and you might have to go in it and out of it, in and out of it, in the grief, and that's okay. That's part of the process. But I think it's just not something that you can avoid for forever. and we can do better when we can begin to start that process, because it's going to take some time. It's not linear. Um, and it's not like, even there's not even a certain time frame for it. Grief is a very interesting part of ourselves, and part of our experience with being in relationship with one another. And so it kind of fluctuates um, all over the place. There are things that I still sometimes grieve from even like my childhood, and things that I couldn't even grieve then. So sometimes it has taken me. I couldn't grieve my childhood and or even things of my younger years until I was further along in life, to where I was at the point to where I had the capacity to to get angry, to get sad, to point fingers, but then also to then be able to turn to compassion and understanding, and all of that sort of stuff, so that I'm not taken out by that, but actually I'm able to move with it. Um, yeah, and I'm right at that 33-minute mark. I don't know what I said, which sometimes can be good. But again, that's the kind of none of my business. I just show up. I share what's on my heart and my mind, and I speak it. And I hope that somebody at some point in time can get some sort of connection through this experience. And so if you're going through grief, I feel you. And yeah, just try to show up for one another in your grief, whether it's for yourself. Try to be able to share it and talk with others about it. If you are a person who can show up for others in their life about their grief, I think it's important to be able to, in listening to that podcast, one of the things that stood out, and in this experience that I had with this person during this tarot reading yesterday, was one of the things that I found interesting is when people talk about the grief or loss, I think oftentimes we just don't talk about it anymore. We just because we don't want to say, well, what happened, or tell me about whatever. And I think that's what we need to try to do is cautiously and mindfully. With this person, I was able to ask, like, well, what was his name? And then I was able to refer to him by name the rest of the conversation. And I asked, like, what was it about him that you liked, or tell me more about his life. And then again, I think when we can get an opportunity to speak about these things that we no longer have in our lives, we can begin to have a more real and authentic connection and understanding of it in a way that can help us move forward, and with the lessons and the teachings and the strength and the sparkly shit and the stuff that don't sparkle, to move along. So I've went a couple minutes longer than I like to do. Join me next week, same time, same place. You can watch this live on YouTube on Sundays at 3:33 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, or you can watch anytime you like on YouTube, or you can listen wherever you listen to podcasts at A Queer Chaplain. Take care. Have a lovely Memorial weekend, and talk with you soon. Also, don't ever hesitate to direct message me or reach out to me if you'd like to get tea or be in conversation.